My dad has a business that me and my brother work for. My dad wants to leave the family business entirely to my older brother. He says it makes the most sense because my older brother is his oldest child and has been in the business the longest. He has a business degree and knows much more about the business side of this work, while I do the physical aspect of the job very well. I was a bit impulsive when I was younger, so he doesn't think it would be a good idea for me to be in charge. To be honest, I don't think it would be either, but considering how much I contribute to this business and that I am his son too, I think I should at least get some say in the future of the business and a stake in the company. Not even half, but some. In the end, my father said no, but that I would get some money after he died. The whole thing really angered me and I was starting to hate continuing to work there and be around them, so I gave my 2 weeks' notice. That decision changed everything. But I had no idea how much. Let me back up and explain what kind of work we actually do, because that's important. My dad runs a specialized construction business. We don't build houses or office buildings. We do foundation systems, specifically, the technical stuff that most contractors won't touch. Pier and beam foundations, structural underpinning, soil stabilization. It's the kind of work where one mistake means the entire building could shift, crack, or worse. And I'm the one who does it. Not my brother Ethan. Me. Ethan's got his business administration degree from state. He handles the estimates, the contracts, the client meetings, the invoicing. He's good at spreadsheets and presentations. But put him on a job site with a laser level and soil compaction meter? He's useless. I don't mean that to be cruel, it's just fact. He's never had to learn the technical side because I've always been there to handle it. Dad started this company 30 years ago, built it from nothing. I respect that. I really do. But somewhere along the way, he decided that the person who wears the hard hat matters less than the person who wears the tie. And that's where we are now. The conversation happened 3 weeks ago. Dad called both of us into his office at the shop. It was a Friday afternoon, and I remember thinking it was weird because Dad usually saves meetings for Monday mornings. "Boys, I'm getting older," he started. He's 62, still healthy, but I could see where this was going. I need to start thinking about succession planning. About what happens to this business when I'm gone. Ethan sat up straighter. I stayed relaxed, figuring we'd finally talk about how to split things. "Ethan, you've been here the longest, and you understand the business operations better than anyone," Dad continued. "I'm planning to leave the company entirely to you." The words hit me like a cold slap. Entirely. What about me? I asked. Dad turned to me with that expression he gets, like he's being patient with a child. "You'll be taken care of. There'll be a cash payout from my estate when the time comes. But the business needs to go to someone who can run it, and Ethan's got the education and experience for that." "I've been working here for 8 years, I said, keeping my voice level. "I handle every major technical job we get. Clients request me by name." "And you're very good at what you do," Dad said. "But running a business is different from doing the work. You were always a bit impulsive. Remember that motorcycle you bought right after high school? Financing you could barely afford? I need someone steady at the helm." That motorcycle. He was going to define my financial judgment forever based on something I did when I was 18. "I'm not asking to run everything," I said. "But I should have some stake in this company. 10%. 20%. Something. I've built half our reputation." Ethan finally spoke up. "It would complicate the ownership structure unnecessarily. Simpler if there's one person making decisions." I looked at my brother. We'd worked side by side for 8 years, and he couldn't even back me up for a small percentage. Dad shook his head. "My decision's made. I'm leaving the company to Ethan. You'll get money from the estate. That's fair." Fair. The word burned. I sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. 8 years of 60-hour weeks. 8 years of being the guy who made sure we never had a failed inspection, never had a callback, never had a structural issue. 8 years of building relationships with our clients' project managers and engineers. And I was getting nothing. "All right," I said quietly. "Then I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice." The room went silent. Dad stared at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "You're quitting?" Ethan said. "Over this?" "Over the fact that I'm clearly just an employee here, not family," I said. "And employees leave jobs when they're not valued. So yeah, I'm giving notice. 2 weeks. Then I'm done." I stood up and walked out before either of them could respond. That was 3 weeks ago. And what happened in those 3 weeks? Well, that's where things get interesting. Because I'd been friendly with Marcus Chen for about 4 years. Marcus is the project manager for Titanium Properties Group. They're a commercial real estate development company that does mid-size office buildings, medical facilities, retail centers. They're our biggest client by far. Probably 60% of our annual revenue comes from Titanium's projects. And Marcus doesn't just call the company. He calls me. Directly. My cell phone. During my notice period, I kept working. Professional to the end. I wrapped up a medical plaza foundation in the first week, did a site inspection on a retail development in the second week. Quality work, like always. On my second to last day, Marcus showed up at the retail site. This wasn't unusual, he often stopped by to check progress. "Hey, man," he said, walking over to where I was checking the pier alignment. "This looks great as usual." "Thanks," I said. "Should be ready for the slab pour next week." "Perfect." He paused. "So, when does the next project start?" "We've got that office complex breaking ground in 3 weeks. 6-story building, complex load requirements. That's all you, right?" I straightened up and brushed the dirt off my hands. "Actually, Marcus, I need to tell you something. Today's my second to last day. I'm leaving the company." His face went blank. "You're what?" "Leaving. Tomorrow's my last day." "Why? Where are you going?" I shrugged. "Nowhere yet. Just time for a change." Marcus looked genuinely distressed. "Does your dad know how to handle the technical work? Because no offense, but when I call with questions, Ethan usually has to put me on hold to ask you." "Ethan's learning," I said, which wasn't really true, but what else was I going to say? Marcus pulled out his phone. "I need to make a call. Don't go anywhere." He walked about 20 feet away, and I could see him talking intensely to someone. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes. Then he came back. "What's your salary right now?" he asked. "Why? Just tell me." 48,000, I said. Marcus laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh, more like disbelief. "Are you serious? That's criminal for your skill level." I didn't respond. What was I going to say? "Yeah, Dad's been underpaying me for years?" "Listen," Marcus said. "My boss and I have been talking for a while about bringing foundation work in-house. We spend so much on contractors, and we're constantly at their mercy for scheduling. But we could never find someone with enough experience to run it. Most guys with your expertise are already running their own companies." I felt something shift in my chest. A small spark of possibility. "I just got off the phone with him," Marcus continued. "He wants to meet with you. Today if possible. We want to offer you a position as our foundation systems manager. You'd be a direct employee of Titanium. We'd pay you," he paused for effect, "140,000 to start, full benefits, company truck, and a budget to hire 2 people to work under you." The number didn't feel real. 140,000. Triple my current salary. "You'd have an office at our headquarters," Marcus added. "You'd still be on site for the technical work, but you'd also help with planning and specifications. And honestly, you'd be saving us money because we're currently paying your dad's company way more than your salary costs." I stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. Can you meet today? Say, 4 o'clock at our main office?" I looked at my watch. It was 1:30. "Yeah, I can do that." "Great. I'll text you the address." Marcus grinned. "Man, this is perfect timing. We were literally about to start looking for someone, and you just fell into our lap." He left, and I stood there on that job site, covered in dust, holding a laser level, trying to process what had just happened. The biggest client. The company that kept Dad's business alive. They wanted to hire me. And if I took the job, Dad would lose 60% of his revenue. But here's the thing, I didn't ask for this. I didn't go to Marcus looking for a job. I didn't badmouth Dad's company or try to steal the client. They came to me. I finished up the day's work, didn't say anything to anyone, and drove to Titanium's headquarters at 4 o'clock. The meeting lasted an hour. Marcus's boss, a guy named Richard Kowalski, was straightforward and professional. He showed me spreadsheets of what they'd been paying Dad's company versus what it would cost to bring me on as an employee with support staff. Even with my salary, benefits, equipment costs, and 2 additional employees, they'd save about 30% annually. "We've wanted to do this for 2 years, Richard said. But we needed the right person. Marcus has been telling me for a while that you're the one actually doing all the work. So when he called today and said you were available, I told him to lock this down immediately." They offered me a 3-year contract. Salary, benefits, company vehicle, equipment budget, office space, hiring authority for a small team. I asked for the weekend to think about it. Richard nodded. "Fair enough. But I'll be honest, we need an answer by Monday. We've got projects starting that need your expertise." I drove home that night with my head spinning. The offer was incredible. Life-changing. But taking it meant Dad's business would take a massive hit. And part of me, a small, angry part, thought, good. That weekend was strange. I didn't tell anyone about the offer. Not Dad, not Ethan, nobody. I just sat with it, thinking through every angle. On Saturday morning, I was drinking coffee on my apartment balcony when something occurred to me. I could use this as leverage. Go to Dad and say, give me a stake in the company, or I take this offer and you lose your biggest client. The thought lasted about 30 seconds before I dismissed it. Because if I did that, even if Dad agreed, I'd know the only reason I got ownership was through blackmail. That's not what I wanted. I wanted him to value me because of what I actually brought to the company, not because I held a gun to his head. And more than that, I just didn't want to work with them anymore. The way Dad looked at me in that meeting, like I was asking for a handout instead of recognition for 8 years of work. The way Ethan sat there silent, not even attempting to back me up. I was done. The decision crystallized in that moment. On Monday morning, I called Richard and accepted the offer. Excellent, he said. We'll have contracts ready by tomorrow. When can you start? Immediately, I said. I'm already done with my previous employer. Perfect. Wednesday work for you? Wednesday works. After I hung up, I sat there staring at my phone. I should call Dad. Tell him what was happening. Give him a heads up. But why? He'd find out soon enough when Titanium sent the formal notification. And honestly, after that meeting where he dismissed 8 years of my work, I didn't feel like I owed him an advance warning. So I didn't call. Wednesday came. I showed up at Titanium's headquarters, signed contracts, got my building access badge, met the HR team, toured my new office. It wasn't huge, maybe 10 by 12, but it had a window, a real desk, a mini fridge, and most importantly, it was mine. The next 2 weeks were a blur of onboarding. I met with engineers, reviewed upcoming projects, started interviewing candidates for my support team. Marcus walked me through the project pipeline, and I started to understand the scale of what Titanium was building. They had 14 projects in various stages over the next 18 months. 8 of them needed foundation work. And none of them would be going to Dad's company. I'd been at Titanium for about 2.5 weeks when I got the first call from Dad. I was in my office, reviewing soil reports for a new project, when my phone buzzed. Dad's name on the caller ID. I stared at it for 3 rings, then answered. Hello? What the hell did you do? Dad's voice was tight with anger. I took a job, I said calmly. Like I told you I would. You took a job with our biggest client. We just got a letter from Titanium saying they're terminating our contract and transitioning foundation services in-house. They offered me a position. I accepted. You planned this. The anger in his voice was rising. You quit just so you could steal our client. I didn't steal anything, I said. I quit because you made it clear I was just an employee, not a partner. Then Titanium offered me a job. Those are 2 separate things. Bullshit. You knew exactly what you were doing. I took a breath. Stay calm. Dad, if you remember, I asked you for a stake in the company. You said no. You told me I'd get money when you died. So I left. I didn't have a job lined up when I gave notice. Titanium approached me during my notice period. You're destroying this company. Dad's voice cracked slightly. We have 12 people employed here. You're putting them out of work. And there it was. The guilt trip. The pivot to making me responsible for other people's livelihoods. You told me that business and family are separate, I said quietly. You told me that Ethan gets the company because he understands business. Well, this is business. Titanium made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I took it. This is different. This is. My other line beeped. Ethan calling. Of course he was. Dad, I have another call. I need to go. We're not done talking about this. Yeah, we are. I hung up. Ethan's call went to voicemail. He left a message. I listened to it later. You're a selfish bastard, you know that? You didn't get your way, so you decided to screw over the whole family. You don't deserve to be part of this business. Dad was right about you. I deleted the message. Over the next week, Dad called 4 more times. I didn't answer. He left voicemails ranging from angry to almost pleading. I didn't respond. Ethan sent texts. Most of them were angry. A few tried to appeal to family loyalty. I didn't respond to those either. Because here's what they didn't understand, or maybe they did understand and just didn't care. For 8 years, I'd given that company everything. Every time a client called with an emergency, I dropped whatever I was doing and handled it. Every time a project ran into technical problems, I solved them. Every time we bid on a complex job, I was the reason we could promise quality work. And when I asked for recognition, for a small stake in what I'd helped build, Dad said no. He said I was impulsive. That I didn't understand business. That Ethan deserved it all because he had a degree and was older. They made me feel like I was being unreasonable for wanting equity. Like I was asking for charity instead of recognition for my actual contributions. So no, I didn't feel guilty. Not about taking a better job. Not about Titanium choosing to bring their foundation work in-house. That was a business decision. Business and family are separate, right? That's what Dad always said. 3 weeks after the phone call, I heard through Marcus that Dad had called Richard directly. Tried to convince him to drop me and come back to their company. Offered a discount. Richard politely declined and told him they were extremely happy with their new arrangement. Marcus told me this over lunch, and I could see he was trying not to smile. Your old man is persistent, I'll give him that, Marcus said. But Richard was pretty clear. We're not going back. This setup is better for us in every way. How's the transition been from your end? I asked. Honestly? Seamless. You're easier to work with than your dad's company ever was. When I call you, you answer. When I have a technical question, you actually know the answer instead of having to call someone else. And you're faster, we're ahead of schedule on the Riverside project. That felt good to hear. Not in a petty way, well, maybe a little petty, but mostly just validating. I wasn't crazy for thinking I brought real value. The market was proving it. Around week 5 at Titanium, my mom called. She'd stayed out of it until then, and I knew this call was coming eventually. Honey, your dad is really upset, she said. No hello, just straight to it. I know, Mom. The business is struggling. They had to let 3 people go last week. I felt a twist in my stomach. Those were guys I'd worked with. Good people. I'm sorry to hear that. Can't you talk to your new company? Maybe send some smaller projects back to your dad? Mom, that's not how it works. Titanium brought me on specifically so they wouldn't need outside contractors. I can't just redirect work to a competitor. He's your father. And when I asked him to treat me like his son in the business, he said no. He made his choice. Silence on the line. Then, you're being stubborn. Maybe, I said. But I'm not being unreasonable. She sighed. Will you at least talk to him? He won't admit it, but I think he regrets how things went. If he regrets it, he can call and say that. Actually say it, not just be angry that I left. You know your father doesn't apologize. Then I guess we don't have anything to talk about. Mom was quiet for a moment. I love you. You know that, right? I know, Mom. I love you too. After we hung up, I sat in my office staring at the skyline. 3 people laid off. That sucked. It really did. But was that my fault? Or was it the result of Dad building a company that depended too heavily on one client and taking for granted the person who maintained that relationship? I knew the answer, but it didn't make me feel great. 2 months in at Titanium, and I was genuinely thriving. My 2 support team members, Carlos and Deshaun, were great hires. Both had some foundation experience but needed training on the more specialized aspects. They were eager to learn, showed up on time, worked hard. I was actually enjoying being a manager, teaching them the technical details I'd spent years mastering. Richard pulled me into his office one afternoon. I wanted to give you some feedback, he said. You've been here 2 months, and I'm extremely impressed. The Riverside project came in under budget and ahead of schedule. The medical plaza specs you developed are exactly what we needed. And Marcus tells me client satisfaction is through the roof. Thank you, I said. I'm really enjoying the work. Good. Because I want to talk about expanding your role. He slid a folder across the desk. We're looking at acquiring a smaller development company. Part of that acquisition would mean taking on their projects, including foundation work. I want you to assess their current contracts and let me know if we can handle the additional load. I opened the folder and started scanning. This would probably mean hiring 2 more people. That's fine. You have hiring authority. Use it. I looked up at him. You're giving me a lot of trust here. Richard shrugged. You've earned it. You do good work, you communicate clearly, you're reliable. That's all I need. It was such a simple statement, but it hit me harder than it should have. You've earned it. That's all I wanted from Dad. Just recognition that I'd earned a place at the table. That evening, I was grabbing dinner at a sports bar near my apartment when I ran into Jake Morrison. Jake was one of the guys who'd been laid off from Dad's company. We'd worked together for 6 years. Hey, man, he said, spotting me at the bar. Didn't expect to see you here. Hey, Jake. How've you been? He slid onto the stool next to me. Honestly? Not great. Job market's tight right now for foundation work. Guilt squeezed my chest. I heard about the layoffs. I'm really sorry. Jake waved it off. Not your fault, man. Your dad's company was already struggling before you left. Lost another client last month, some warehouse project. And with the economy being what it is, smaller projects are drying up. Another client? I asked. Yeah. Something about permit issues and financing falling through. But between you and me, I think it's more than that. Jake lowered his voice. Your brother doesn't really know what he's doing with the technical side. We had 2 failed inspections last month. That never happened when you were there. I took a drink of my beer, not sure what to say. Look, Jake continued, I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad. You did what you had to do. Your dad didn't treat you right, everyone knew it. But just so you know, the problem's over. There aren't because you left. You leaving just exposed problems that were already there. Are you gonna be alright? Job-wise? I asked. Yeah, I'll figure something out. Actually, I heard you're hiring over at Titanium. I looked at him. You heard that? Word gets around. Are you? I am, actually. Need 2 more people. You interested? Jake's eyes lit up. Seriously? Send me your resume. I can't promise anything, but I'll definitely look at it. Man, that would be amazing. He pulled out his phone. What's your email? I gave it to him, and we talked for another hour. He told me more about what was happening at Dad's company. Equipment breaking down and not being replaced. Ethan trying to bid jobs without understanding the technical requirements, leading to money-losing contracts. Dad stressed constantly, getting angry at everyone. It painted a picture of a business in decline. And yeah, losing Titanium had been a big hit, but it wasn't the only problem. The company had been coasting on my technical expertise and Dad's reputation for years. Without both of those things, the cracks were showing. When I got home that night, I found myself thinking about something Jake had said. You leaving just exposed problems that were already there. Maybe he was right. Maybe Dad's business model, relying heavily on one major client, underpaying the technical expert, prioritizing business credentials over actual skill, was never sustainable. Maybe I didn't destroy the company. Maybe I just stopped holding it together. It was month 3 when I overheard something that changed how I felt about everything. I was at a job site doing a final inspection. The site was a renovation project, adding a second story to an existing building, which meant foundation reinforcement. I'd finished my work and was heading back to my truck when I heard voices from around the corner of the building. Dad's voice. And Ethan's. I froze. They were here? Why? Can't believe he bailed on us like this, Ethan was saying. I saw this coming, Dad replied. That's why I didn't want to give him any ownership. He's always been selfish. Remember I told you about that motorcycle? Still, I didn't think he'd actually screw us over. Here's what we do, Dad said, and his voice took on a calculating tone. Once he's gone, we hire someone cheaper. These commercial clients won't know the difference. The relationship is with our company name, not with him. My blood went cold. You think they won't notice? Ethan asked. Not right away. And by the time they do, we'll have locked them into contracts. Listen, your brother was good at the work, but he was expensive. We were paying him almost $50,000 a year. We can hire someone for $35,000 and pocket the difference. What if the quality drops? It won't drop that much. And even if it does, what are they gonna do? Foundation work is foundation work. I stood there, around the corner, listening to my father and brother plan to replace me with cheaper labor while diminishing the value of what I did. This conversation must have happened during my notice period. They'd been planning this. They'd always planned to replace me. The only surprise was that I left before they could execute their plan. And suddenly, I didn't feel guilty anymore. Not about taking the Titanium job. Not about the layoffs. Not about the business struggling. They didn't value me. They valued my labor, but only because it was cheaper than it should have been. The moment I asked for recognition, they started planning to swap me out for a discount option. I walked to my truck without announcing my presence. Started the engine. Drove back to the office. That night, I thought about calling Dad. Confronting him about what I'd heard. But what would be the point? He'd deny it, or justify it, or blame me for eavesdropping. The truth was already clear, I'd made the right decision. 4 months in, Jake joined my team. He was exactly what we needed, experienced, hardworking, and grateful for the opportunity. With him, Carlos, and Deshaun, we were handling Titanium's foundation work smoothly and even taking on some of the projects from the acquisition Richard had mentioned. I was making more money than I'd ever imagined. I had a team I actually enjoyed working with. I had a boss who valued my expertise and gave me autonomy. And I hadn't talked to Dad or Ethan since those initial angry phone calls. Mom still called occasionally. The conversations were always short. She'd tell me about family things, cousin Sarah's wedding, Aunt Linda's surgery, normal stuff. She never pushed me to reconcile anymore. I think she realized it wasn't going to happen. One day, Marcus and I were having lunch at our usual spot when he brought up something unexpected. So, I ran into your dad at an industry conference last week, he said casually. I looked up from my sandwich. Yeah? He tried to pitch me again. Said he'd give us a significant discount if we'd consider bringing some work back to his company. What did you tell him? Same thing Richard told him. We're not interested. We're happy with our current setup. Marcus paused. He looked rough, man. Tired. Older than I remember. I didn't know what to say to that. I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad, Marcus continued. Just thought you should know. He's struggling. His business is struggling, I corrected. That's different. Fair point. We finished lunch and went back to work. But Marcus's words stuck with me. Dad looked rough. Tired. Older. Part of me felt sad about that. He was still my father. But another part of me thought, actions have consequences. You can't treat people as disposable and then be surprised when they leave. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in months. I drove past the old shop. It was Sunday, so nobody was there. But I could see the differences. 2 of the equipment bays were empty, trucks sold, probably. The sign needed repainting. The parking lot had potholes that hadn't been filled. It looked like what it was, a business in decline. I didn't feel triumphant looking at it. I just felt tired. This wasn't what I wanted. I never wanted to hurt Dad's business. I just wanted to be valued. Was that really too much to ask? I drove home and tried to put it out of my mind. Month 5 brought an unexpected development. I was in a planning meeting with Richard and the executive team when Richard made an announcement. I want to talk about expanding our foundation services. We've been so successful with our in-house team that I think there's an opportunity to offer these services to other developers. Essentially, we'd be competing directly in the foundation contractor market. Everyone looked at me. Could we handle that? Richard asked. I thought about it. We'd need to expand the team significantly. Maybe double our current size. And we'd need more equipment. But yeah, technically we could do it. What about you personally? Could you manage a team that size? I think so. I'd probably need an assistant manager, someone to handle scheduling and logistics while I focus on the technical side and client relationships. Richard nodded. Put together a proposal. What it would take, what it would cost, what kind of revenue we could expect. If the numbers work, let's do it. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked on that proposal. It was exciting, honestly. The idea of building something from the ground up, doing it right, creating the kind of company I wished Dad's had been. The proposal came together at about 30 pages. Equipment needs, hiring timeline, training, protocols, market analysis, revenue projections. I presented it to Richard and the executive team on a Wednesday afternoon. They approved it the next day. Start hiring immediately, Richard said. I want this operational within 3 months. So that's what I did. I put out job postings. I contacted trade schools. I started interviewing candidates. And one of the applications that came across my desk was from someone I recognized, Tom Bradley, Dad's longest tenured employee. 20 years with the company. I called him directly. Tom, I got your application. What's going on? He sighed. Your dad let me go last week. Said he couldn't afford to keep me. I'm sorry to hear that. It's okay. I saw it coming. The company's in bad shape. They're down to just your dad, Ethan, and 2 young guys who barely know what they're doing. 4 employees left. Out of the original 12. Are you interested in joining us here? I asked. That's why I applied. I heard through Jake that you're expanding. I'd love to be part of it. I hired him on the spot. Over the next month, 3 more people from Dad's company applied. I hired 2 of them. The other one didn't have the skills we needed. And I realized something, I wasn't stealing Dad's employees. They were leaving because the company was failing, and I was offering them something better. That's not revenge. That's just the market working. 6 months after I left Dad's company, I had a team of 12 people. We were handling all of Titanium's foundation work plus taking on outside contracts. Revenue projections were exceeding expectations. Richard pulled me aside one day. I want to talk to you about something. We went to his office. You've built something impressive here, he said. In 6 months, you've created a foundation services division that's not only self-sustaining but profitable. I'm considering spinning it off as a separate subsidiary with you as the director. You'd have significant equity in that subsidiary. Equity. The thing I'd asked Dad for and been denied. How much equity? I asked. We're thinking 20% to start, with the opportunity to earn up to 35% based on performance benchmarks. I sat there, stunned. That's incredibly generous. It's not generosity. It's recognizing value. You've earned it. There was that phrase again. You've earned it. I need to think about it, I said. Take your time. But not too much time. Richard smiled. I left his office feeling like I was floating. 20% equity in a subsidiary that I'd built. That I'd manage. That could grow into something significant. Everything I'd asked Dad for, Richard was offering freely. That night, I sat in my apartment with a beer, thinking about how far things had come in 6 months. 6 months ago, I was an undervalued employee in a family business, getting paid $48,000 a year with no prospects for advancement. Now I was making $140,000, managing a team of 12, about to become a minority owner in a subsidiary company. The contrast was staggering. And Dad's company? Down to 4 employees, struggling to stay afloat, losing clients, barely surviving. I should have felt victorious. Vindicated. Triumphant. Instead, I just felt sad. Because this didn't have to happen. If Dad had just valued me, if he'd given me even a small stake, I'd still be there. The company would still have its biggest client. Those 8 people would still have jobs. All of this, the success I'd built and the ruin Dad was facing, came from one moment. One decision. Dad choosing to prioritize primogeniture and a business degree over actual contribution and skill. One decision, and everything changed. I never called Dad to gloat. I never sent him articles about my success. I never drove by the shop to see it declining. I just moved forward. Built something new. Became the person I wanted to be in business. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well, building something better, and proving that you were right about your own value all along. It's month 8 now. I'm sitting in my office, my bigger office, since we moved to a larger space, looking at the equity agreement Richard's lawyers drew up. 20% of a subsidiary that's already valued at over $3 million. I'm going to sign it. Of course I'm going to sign it. But before I do, I want to say something to anyone watching this who's in a similar situation. If you're working for family and you're not being valued, it's okay to leave. It's okay to prioritize your own career, your own future, your own worth. Blood doesn't entitle anyone to your labor, your expertise, or your loyalty if they're not willing to recognize what you bring. And if leaving hurts their business? That's not your fault. That's their failure for not recognizing what they had while they had it. I gave Dad 8 years. I asked for recognition. I asked for a stake. I asked to be valued. He said no. So I left, and I built something better. And you know what? I don't regret it. Not for a second. If this story hit you in any way, hit like, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment and let me know, have you ever had to leave a family business? What happened? I'd love to hear your stories. Anyway, that's my story. Thanks for watching.